Now, here I would like to admit something before we get started today, something I heard some time ago, that the pleasure of misunderstanding is indistinguishable from the pleasure of understanding. From the point of view of the person who does the understanding, you see what I'm saying? Because there is a, that person will not be able to distinguish his or her misunderstanding from understanding. So I had the pleasure of understanding this week as I was studying Revelation 17. But I just want to say it could have been the pleasure of misunderstanding. And so, just in case. But I actually think it was the right kind. So let's see. Our ambition today is quite limited because I'm not going to try to do many verses. These verses, either we do them with a sense of thinking of trying to understand it, or we don't do it at all. There is so much detail in these verses in Revelation 17. We are looking for a foot that fits Revelation's shoe. And we have said that the foot of the secular Roman Empire is too small for the shoe that Revelation symbols has give us. And then we have hinted, I haven't really hit very hard on this point, but we have more than hinted, that the foot of the Christian Roman Empire is a better fit than the foot of the secular Roman Empire. But, and this is a big but the main concern in Revelation is the power behind the powers. So even if we were to make improve things somewhat by saying, well, a bigger history is in view here, and there is a Christian element to that history, there is a subversion going on, we still would not have done it quite right, because we have to see the power behind the powers and what that power is up to. So we're still sort of looking here. We're still trying out various feet to fit our shoe. And now there is a promise in Revelation 17:7, and let us review that promise. Revelation 17:7, but the angel said to me, and I have abbreviated this verse a little, I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that carries her. So do you get the sense, do you get the feeling here that we will get this one, we will get it explained, that an explanation is forthcoming? We asked that last time. We said yes to that. And what is going to be explained? What will be explained? I have underlined it. Because this promises to be a wall-to-wall, a comprehensive explanation. What will be explained is the mystery of the woman, the mystery of the beast, and the mystery of the 10 horns. The whole thing is going to be explained here if we can take our guiding angel literally. Maybe one of you will read this verse, Revelation 17, verse 8.
The beast that you saw was, and is not, and is about to ascend from the bottomless pit and go to destruction. And the inhabitants of the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will be amazed when they see the beast, because it was, and is not, and is to come.
So Revelation 17:8 gives us a description of the beast and gives us certain characteristics of this phenomenon, this power. What strikes you here? Now I have desisted from underlining anything, so you can do your own underlining here. The beast is characterized as a beast that was and is not and is about to. And then in the end, twice in this verse, they see the beast, it was and is not and is to come. So these are clearly, these repetitions clearly matter somewhat as to describing this beast. And yes, King James says that it was and is not and yet is. So I don't know if that is an interpretation, or whether the King James has used another kind of Greek text to translate it that way, because the Greek text and the NRSV translates exactly what the Greek text is saying and is to come. I think that is so. I don't know why that wording would be. Okay, now I see. Now I see. We'll get back to that. Yes, that's right, because the word there is paremi, and we're going to discuss that. So, and yet is present. Let's just hold it. Thank you for making us aware of that. And yet is present is what the King James has, and there is a reason for that, and it actually is it's fair enough to translate it that way. Yes. Is this an allusion to Christ's life, death, and resurrection? Sort of that this is a kind of imitative project, because here we're discussing the bad side, right? So, okay. So there could be two vanishing acts, as it were. At least there is a vanishing act on the part of the dragon, who goes away in chapter 12 to make war. There is that we did discuss as a vanishing act. And then there is a sort of death and resurrection imagery for the beast from the sea, that had a mortal wound that looked like it was dying, and then it revived. So there is there are many moving parts here. This is why, knowing that this is going to be difficult, the book of Revelation anticipates your reaction and mine and says, start thinking. It says this calls for a mind that has wisdom. Let's go to it. That this is not something that is going to be obvious. And this text we have seen before, a text like it in Revelation 13:18, where there is the number 666, and it says this calls for a mind that has wisdom. So here we need to be wise. Here we need to just try to map it out, sort through it, and see what comes up here. And then you have this text. Wow, 17:9b and verse 10. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated. Also, they are 7 kings, of whom 5 have fallen. One is living, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must remain only a little while. And our guiding angel has promised that all of these things will be explained. So we're going to leave this room this morning understanding all of these things, because it is now or never that these things are going to be explained. The angel has promised that, so let's be hopeful. I do admit that this is much more difficult than passing boards in medicine or things like that. Those things are easy. This is much more complicated. Let me just interject one thing here. As I was walking across the parking lot, I thought about this book, and I thought about certain sentiments in our own faith community in the Seventh-day Adventist Church that says we have talked too much about the beasts, and we need to talk more about other things. And I don't agree with that. I think maybe we have talked about the beasts in a wrong way, or in misguided ways, and not really gotten it right. But these are symbols of human reality. These are profound composites trying to convey to our time human reality. And what if we have studied these beasts too much? It could mean that we have studied human reality too much. And if it didn't seem to us to be a study of human reality, then we haven't studied it the right way. But the notion of having studied it too much is a notion I would not be quite ready to embrace. I actually think we have studied them too little. Very few people have understood this text for one thing. And now we will see whether we will have the pleasure of understanding or that other pleasure, the pleasure of misunderstanding, which I said is identical. describing the beast some more, verse 11. As for the beast that was and is not, it is an eighth, but it belongs to the seven, and it goes to destruction. There are a couple of phrases in these verses that we will not have time to describe today or discuss today. They need to be discussed. But these are the texts we will be discussing, starting in verse 7 through verse 11. Those started in verse 8. Verses 8 through 11 is the textual substrate for our discussion this morning. Before we look again and try to map out the beast that was and is not and is to come, let's look at that other power, that other figure in Revelation, the main character, you might say. God is being described in Revelation in very similar but not identical terms. So how does the book of Revelation configure the divine identity? In Revelation 1:4, grace to you from him who is, and who was, and who is to come. Revelation 1:8, I am the Alpha and the Omega, says the Lord God, who is, and who was, and who is to come, the Almighty. Revelation 4:8, at the beginning of the throne room scene, holy, 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 the Lord God, the Almighty, say the angels, who was and is to come. And we give you thanks, Lord God Almighty, who are and who were. Now, you should hear who is to come, but there is a sense in which that has already materialized, maybe. So the is to come has been already is already happening. And chapter 16, verse 5, the previous one was 11:17. You are just, O Holy One, who are and were. So now we have something against which to measure the other side's description, don't we? Because now we have a very pointed characterization, we have the divine identity spelled out in these terms. And by the way, the text in the Old Testament that seems to underlie this way of talking about God is which one? Which Old Testament text is being called into play in this way of describing the divine identity? Someone has written a doctoral dissertation on that topic. You would be amazed how many doctoral dissertations have been written on specific texts in Revelation and just about anything else in the Bible. So what is which Old Testament text could it be? It's very odd in Greek the way it is. The one who was, the way the wording in Greek. It seems like John is trying to capture a Hebraism and write in Greek what he has seen written in the Old Testament in Hebrew. Well, the best candidate text is really in the book of Exodus. There is God appearing to Moses in the burning bush. I think it's Exodus 3:14. Moses is there standing in front of the burning bush, and the bush is not burning up, it is not being consumed. And then there is this conversation between God and Moses. And the conversation, eventually Moses says, who shall I say sent me? What is your name? And then God says, I am that I am, And how do you say that in Greek? I am that I am. How do you say that? How do you say that in any language, for that matter? It's not that easy to say. This, at least some scholars think, and I think that is the best candidate text, is the best way of saying that, of configuring or capturing the divine identity. So God is who? He is the one who is and who was and who is to come. And Jesus is who? He is also that. He is also the one who is and was and is to come. So there is, the divine identity and the identity of Jesus are, similar. There is a very much of a sort of taking that for granted, that Jesus belongs within the divine identity and can be described in the same way as the one who was and is to come. So let's say we have now configured the divine identity. Now to the identity of the other side, the demonic ID, as it were. And Revelation 17:8 says that the beast you saw was and is not and is about to ascend from the bottomless pit. Now holding these up, the description of the divine identity on one side and the description of the demonic identity on the other side, that is our primary task now. What's the difference? What's the difference? Well, that was easy. Divine and demonic. And I will not spell out all the ones on the divine, but the difference was what? There is an is not here. And that's the difference. Otherwise, they're the same, aren't they? They're sort of covering the same territory. There is an is not on the demonic identity. Same verse, the last part of that verse that we read already. The inhabitants of the earth will be amazed when they see the beast, because it was and is not and is to come. And 17:11. As for the beast that was and is not, and so on. So 3 times, many times, 5, 6 times, we have the divine identity spelled out as was, is, and is to come. And 3 times in this chapter, we have the demonic identity spelled out as was, is not, and is to come. So this is not accidental. This is quite intentional, obviously. Something is he's trying to tell us something here. What is he trying to tell us? Well, David Aune, in his Revelation commentary, says that this formulation is designed by the author as a parody of his predication of God as ho on, kai ho ein, kai ho erkomenon, the one who is and who was and who is coming. Now, whether that is true to say that it is designed as parody or as imitation, that most people think parody. But at least it is a contrast. It is a point of contrast in describing the identity of one and the identity of the other by putting in an element, a contrastive element there. And we have to now find out what that could be. And I will make 3 specific suggestions, and then we will discuss which one or all of the above, whichever. So I will make 3 specific suggestions after sort of featuring this like this. God's side is what? God's side, or God, is the one who is and who was and who is to come. And the opposing side was and is not and is to come. I think he's trying to make it easy for us, actually. I actually think he's a good pedagogue who means this to be easy. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say, well, he meant to be helpful. We'll see. The first suggestion I have, and this one I have said it as though it is a fact, even though it is obviously something that could be contested. But I am proposing that this is a characterization of being, what you might call an ontological identification, where the opposing side then is a contrast to the one who is and who was and who is to come. So they are not the same kind of being. There is an ontological distinction here. One is and was and is to come. The other one isn't that. See, he isn't God, in other words, because if he was the one who is and was and is to come, then he would be God. But he isn't God. And that certainly is important, even though maybe he is trying to be seen as though he is God. See that part of it? So the Revelation wants to point out that contrast, the ontologic difference, the difference on the level of being. And I talked to Dr. Thompson here the other day because he is reading a very difficult book that has all kinds of difficult words, and ontology is a difficult word, but it has to do with the kind of being. Ontologic is being, and these are different kinds of beings. They do not they are not on the same side of the big ontologic divide. And the big ontologic divide is which one? Ontologic divide. In Revelation, maybe even more interested in character than in ontology. But the big ontologic divide on the level of being or ontology is which one? That is correct. On the one side there is the creator, and on the other side there are created beings, creatures. So if we know nothing else about this other, since this is a contest, since the cosmic conflict is a contest for recognition, to be seen, where both sides in the conflict wishes to be seen as is contest. Let's say we are contesting the same ontologic territory, the same territory of being, as it were. And then the book of Revelation says, well, this person was and is not and is to come. There is a contrast on the level of, in the sort of, what should I say, in the DNA of the being. And this one is the creator, and the other side is not on that side of the ontologic divide. So this I would propose that to be quite significant to the way these things are described. I'll go through the other 2 points too, and then we will discuss it. This could be a description of method, where the is not denotes stealth and secrecy. So it could be a distinction on the level of character. It could be, I'm saying it is, because I think it is, but you can disagree with that. That it is that it does characterize a difference on the level of being, but it could also describe a difference in method, and that was what who said that a while ago about the dragon going away. You said that, didn't you, Brad? Yeah, that in Revelation 12 the dragon goes away. He sort of disappears. There is a kind of a vanishing act. And then in Revelation 17, he does in fact come back. There is a sort of return. He's sort of coming into the picture again. He is absent. He was absent. He's present. So on this, you could put under the level on that the is not could refer to differences in character, where he is operating in secret. He is a deceptive power. And then and then the third one, it could be a description of story, a sort of bio of this phenomenon, where there is a what could we call that? Death and resurrection imagery. So why don't you comment on these proposals, and then we are going to discuss one of these even more. But I'd like you to comment on these. Do you prefer one above the other? Do you approve all of them? Do you approve none of them? See what I'm or any questions as to what I am trying to make of the is not? Because obviously that is the distinctive phrase. It is the is not that we need to nail that somewhat. Yes. So do we take them in a temporal sequence? Well, which of these categories would fit best for a temporal reading? You could. But you could. But just I'd say to John that the story paradigm would specifically be more, saying that a chronological reading means it was, then it isn't, and then it comes back. That is a sort of story outline, an outline for a story, and which one? Yeah. Okay. Let's hear some more comments here. Yes. Now, since this is being recorded, we are losing big way here, because what you're saying is very, very succinct and a very legitimate observation. That in verse 11 it says that the beast that was and is not is one of the what? How did you? He's an eighth. He's an eighth king. And he is also one of the seven. So he's already part. So he is coming, but he's already part of it, part of what has gone before. So yes, the plot thickens. That would be less chronology, wouldn't it? That would be a little chronology, maybe a little story, and character too, wouldn't it? So yes. Why can't it be all of them? Well, it can. It can be all of them, and I think we should entertain all of them with qualify it and try to see which. Yes. Other? Yes, Melissa. So there could be an echo of Isaiah 14. Well, certainly on the level of the big story, the side that represents the is not, whatever the is not refers to, the side that is represented as an is not aspires to be recognized as the one who was and is to come. That, I think, cannot be contested. In the bigger story, that is the territory that is being fought over here. Let's try to do a bit more on the is not on point 1, characterization of being. I am proposing here something that I haven't quite seen in other interpretations, but I think it is legitimate to propose it. So that in the imagery of Revelation 17, even though it recapitulates some of the things we have talked about in Revelation 13, where the beast from the sea, the beast that comes up from the sea has 7 heads and 10 horns, and this beast looks very similar to that. It is very much like that. It has 7 heads and 10 horns. I will say that there is a progression in the storytelling in Revelation 17 to the point, moving from 13 to 17, that while the two beasts here, the two beasts in Revelation 17, in some ways stand apart from the demonic. I mean, stand in distinction. They are sort of delineated in distinction from the demonic. Here we have the dragon and the beast, sort of, I would have liked one of you to come down and draw a very nice beast. Because my drawing is very bad. Maybe we can get that. If we need it, I might just ask one of you to volunteer. In Revelation 17, the dragon is not mentioned, but I will propose that the dragon is like this here, and you can't read it. That there is a conflation of identities, whereas here the identities of these 3 protagonists are distinct. Here they are much less distinct, and I think Harvey's comment on the 8th, there is an 8th here who is already present, that makes this a much more messy thing. So in the beasts, the demonic sort of background, the demonic power is coming out more. It's a sort of coming out or manifesting itself more. And I'll try to give some evidence for this. So I'm saying that the beast is increasingly wearing see-through clothes. It's like it's a thin veneer. I wish I had some, I thought, do I have some clothes at home where I could, some bridal veil. You know, here you don't want me to show up in see-through clothes. we won't do that. I would have worn them on top of my usual clothes. Don't worry. It is the power behind the powers that commands interest. And the power behind the powers is increasingly sort of coming to the surface. So let me try to show why that could be so. We have this expression, the bottomless pit. From where does the beast in Revelation 13 come? The beast in Revelation 13, the first beast in Revelation 13, comes from the sea, and the other beast comes from the earth. From where does the beast in Revelation 17 come? The beast in Revelation 17, verse 8. The beast in Revelation 13 comes, verse 8, 17, verse 8, comes from the bottomless pit. So there is a difference. So I said, let's say here we have sea, here we have bottomless pit. What difference does it make? What's the difference? The beasts are described as almost, same thing. They look the same. They have 7 heads, 10 horns. But the Revelation 17 beast comes from the bottomless pit. What's the difference? Who lives in the bottomless pit? The cosmic opponent lives there. That's his address. That's his domain. So what I'm saying is that this beast, even though it looks identical to the previous one, is increasingly sort of invested with the paraphernalia of the demonic. That's more obvious. That is more that has been appropriated here by this designation, the bottomless pit, and you'll have to look at those verses that I have put on the slide here to see that. In Revelation 9, the occupant of the bottomless pit there is unambiguously Satan himself. He is the one who goes to the bottomless pit and has the key to the bottomless pit, and seems to have now, in Revelation 17, the freedom to ascend again from the bottomless pit. So that is not unimportant. That is not an unimportant datum. In Revelation 17:8, in the end of that verse, it says very innocuously in the NRSV that he was and is to come. But in John's version, in the King James, it said that he was and is and yet is present. Well, the word that is used there is not simply the verb to come. It is the word or the verb paremi, which means to come and be present. So paremi has 2 connotations in the New Testament. It has the connotation of being present in contrast to not being present. The contrast of presence versus absence. But paremi is also the verb from which we have the noun that belongs to paremi is the noun parousia. And some of you have gone to church for many, many years, and it has not been lost on you what the word parousia means. What is parousia in the New Testament? It has been lost on you all these years. Yes, the coming of Christ, exactly. The coming of Christ. So presence, this is this is coming. There is a coming in view here. And that coming is a sort of, is a coming that happens, what should I say? It contests. Now, there is a coming of, let's put it in simpler terms. There is in the New Testament the notion of the coming of Jesus. That notion is well known in Christianity. There is in the New Testament also the notion of the coming of the opposing side. That is a notion less well known. That there is a, both of these powers are coming. And so when we have is to come here in verse 17:8, it means not only coming back, that this power will be present and used to be absent. There is a sort of coming into view again, reappearance, you might say. But it also means, it is also hinting at least, that here we have a sort of second coming, in a sense of, and even a second coming, if I may take it sort of all the way, a second coming, what is being aspired here, what the opposing side is aspiring, is to be seen as its counterpoint. It is that kind of connotation. So the question here relates to the bowl sequence, where we have in our presentation here, we haven't really discussed it fully, but we said that there is increasing manifestation of demonic activity in the vacuum, you might say, in the empty space that is left where God retreats, where God leaves the scene of action. And yes, I think this is elaborating on that thing. The text in the outside the book of Revelation, the text elsewhere in the New Testament that develops this theme is 2 Thessalonians 2, where you can actually get a sense that this was a topic that was part of Paul's teaching in the churches, where he actually describes a scenario very similar to what we see here in Revelation. I am planning, at the end of this series, I want to do a walkthrough for those who might be interested to see related scenarios in the New Testament, and I'd like to do 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, just to visit that and see how that looks. Yes, that's a great point. There couldn't be a neutral area. There cannot be any vacuum. Like we learned in medical school, you don't leave any sort of holes anywhere. You have to sew it up. If you leave a hole, it will, the nature doesn't accept any vacuums, and spiritual realities seem to do it, not to do it either. So if there is a sort of a hole, something else will move into it, and what moves into that hole is the demonic in the New Testament. Yes. The beast comes from the bottomless pit. It is to come. That language is is an imitative language. It is coming into the space of the second coming. And then there is this description that this beast that was and is not is himself an eighth. Here NRSV says the eighth, but it says an eighth in the Greek, and is of the seven, or is an eighth and is of the seven. That it should have said an eighth and is of the seven. So what you're seeing here is that there is something that is conflated. How many heads does the beast have? So what is the eighth? Where is the eighth? It is an eighth. An eighth what? An eighth head? Well, the most important part there is no eighth. So we'll have to do some outside reading on this one, obviously. Scholars think that the eighth is a resurrection metaphor. It is a sort of, that there is a talk was talked about much in the early church, that the eighth day is a sort of the the resurrection day and so on. And there is a notion of a resurrection, but there is also in this metaphor a notion of something that is there, but it isn't seen, because the beast has only 7 heads, but yet it is part of the. It is an 8th, but it is part of the 7. So it is there and it isn't there. That kind of. It's been there the whole time, and it is the ultimate one, isn't it? That one is the ultimate one. It is sort of the last one in this configuration. Just in a very simplest way of adding this up, I would add it up to mean this, that it just reinforces what I tried to say here, that in the imagery of Revelation 17, the demonic is increasingly in view. That the bottomless pit, that there is to come, and is the 8th, that those are features of the demonic. That is what is going on. That's what this seems to add up to. So the is not. What isn't it then? What is the is not? The is not so much an earthly power. That's where interpreters have always sort of, earthly interpreters have tended to see the is not in terms of Roman imperial categories, and in some Adventist interpretations in Roman ecclesial categories. But the is not needs to be seen more in terms of the demonic. That's what I'm proposing, and I think that is quite well supported by the text. Ellen G. White wrote a letter in 1896, and I'd like to piggyback a little on that, or just put it there in the margins. There is need of a much closer study of the Word of God, especially should Daniel and the Revelation have attention as never before in the history of our work. We may have less to say in some lines in regard to the Roman power and the papacy, but we should call attention to what the prophets and apostles have written under the inspiration of the Spirit of God. This statement is clearly saying that we have not studied this book and taken away from this book all we could have. When we study it more, we will take away more things than we have taken away so far, and we may have less to say in some lines about, less to say is a very interesting way of talking. Less to say about what? Less to say about the earthly realities. She doesn't say more, that we have more to say, but I will propose it like this. Less about earthly powers, more about the power behind the powers. And that's exactly what Revelation is doing. And more yet about the one whose character is slandered. So there is less to say on one side, and there might be a corollary to the less on one side. There may be more to say on the other side. And I'm just guessing. I'm not really just guessing, because I think the book of Revelation is leading you to the more. The power behind the powers, and also to the one whose character has been slandered. I have 3 minutes left on my watch, and I'll just run this by you, and then if we'll have to do this by questions next time. Here is my translation of 17:10, and I have changed one phrase only. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman is seated, and they are 7 kings. 5 have fallen. The one is, and the other has not yet come, and when he comes, he must remain only a little while. What have I changed here compared to the NRSV? Compared to any translation that you might have? I have just, the one is living. Yeah, I have just added one little thing there. The most innocuous of instruments in writing. I have added the word "the." I have added the word "the" because in the 5 have fallen, our translation says, and then they will say one is, and the other has not yet come. But I am translating it literally, as the Greek says it. The one is, and the other one has not yet come. Does that change anything? What does it change? It is more specific. It definitizes the referent here. See, one is the other has not come, and when he comes, he must remain only a little while. Well, our time is up, and we will stop. I had more slides in my thing here, but we'll have to pick up there next time and see what's going on here, because I do think that we can emerge from this understanding exactly what is in view. No ifs, ands, or buts. It is definite. He knows, and he thinks you and I should know too.